All right, 5:31, almost June, Sunday. About 4:30, 79 degrees outside, sunny in Geneva. Looks like it's going to be a cooler, sunny, rain-free week. We're deep in the covers. Good time to focus on some of the single-site fungicides. We'll use them till about third or fourth cover. Then we'll take a break and bring them back up right around just pre-harvest. You can see we have third and fourth. Barely approaching second cover now for most places. What have I noticed a lot? We've had a lot of rain, and now we're getting a bit of a dry spell and some heat, and a lot of primary mildew infections are showing up on susceptible cultivars, usually yellow flesh varieties, or some things like Cortland or Ida Red, or any other Apollo Red, or any of the other types as well. If we have hot, dry weather, a lot of humid mornings and evenings, you can get some susceptible infections up pretty high, and you can burn out the blighted shoots. What these things will do, this will be a terminal that it sort of emerged and leads to a lot of secondary mildew infections that'll plague your developing shoots later on, and could lead to the terminal buds becoming infected and aborting, and sort of impacting your terminal buds and return bloom and everything else that happens. These will come out there, they'll really hit the leaves, and they'll start sporulating again, and it'll kind of snowball. It's a good time to really focus on them. This is around the time I'd really be telling you to target powdery mildew management with single site fungicides. If you got these, you can probably kill them pretty easy with you can burn out the blighted shoots, particularly with the group 11s and the group 7s. These should stop the spores from respirating and germinating and kill them pretty quickly. So any of you in the organic world, potassium bicarbonate type products as well, Caligreen and things like that can also pop the powdery mildew spores and kind of burn out these terminals. Stuff like oxidate as well, probably good as well. And of course, sulfur is still one of the better ones. If you're fully conventional, I might recommend Lumen Sensation or Maravon. Maybe use one of them up now if you have a lot of powdery mildew. It's going to be a bigger issue around lakes and sort of areas where the climate's buffered and you get a lot of wind and a little bit more drying and a little more warm weather. If it's sort of cool and damp, you might not see it as much, but it does like moisture, but it doesn't like direct moisture. And we don't have enough heat to be concerned about sulfur damage at this point. If it gets above 85 for longer periods of time, you could injure the crop with sulfur. But for the most part, I think you're fairly safe to use it. So it'd be a good time to do that if you tend to have a mildew problem. Some of the major mildew fungicides are really the strong ones. The 7-11 combos are pretty good. You can see the Flint Extra is a really good one. These tend to stop respiration in fungi and will cause the mildew to kind of die up. 7-11 sort of gives you both the 11 and the group 7, which two different type of respiratory inhibitors will go right after those fungal spores and should keep them from causing secondary infections on your leaves. This week it looks like it's going to be a pretty easy week. We're well beyond the ascospore ejection in most locations. We do not have 5 inches of rain, 5 days, or an inch of rain. And the only reason to really rotate in one of these groups this week would be if you really hadn't sprayed in a while, or you're having a lot of powdery mildew pressure. I'm not seeing scabs show up yet, even on my untreated Macintosh, which means we probably got a little bit of time before we have to worry about burning out anything you might find. Cedar apple rust infection periods have probably happened. But if you put on a group 3 earlier, you're probably fine. Apple blots, you probably will be managing with any of these applications you put on over the last couple of weeks, any of these groups. Keep that under control as well as the initial inoculant for fly speck sooty blotch. I mean, this is one of these weeks where I'd say would be really easy. You can just switch over to Captan. You're probably closing in on the end of the Mancozeb BHI 75-day or 77-day restriction. Check that before you apply the combo of Captan plus Mancozeb. You might have to just move to Captan. Or, this is one of these easy weeks, I think, where you'd be able to try biopesticides. We'll check different areas out. Anytime I think it's easy for New York, it's hard for one of the other locations. And we'll delve into that in a bit. What else do we got? If you're full organic, I don't think you need to really pull out the big guns. It's not going to be a lot of rain. These are two pretty good biopesticide products, the Oso and the Howler. And if you're at powdery mildew is a problem, this would be a great week to go after it with your organic sulfur. Just a light 7 pounds per 100 gallons. If you're a 300-gallon orchard, it's going to be looking more like 21. You really want to make sure you don't change the concentration, sort of match that concentration for the gallonage and the label as well. It's an easy week. Definitely could use a biopesticide of choice. The liquid ones are just pretty easy to use. I'm seeing fire blight in my own plots, and where are we with fire blight? We're beyond the plea broom. We're into the and systemic and distance inducers, and we're looking out for any trauma situations. I don't think there've been any hail. A lot of wind. Wind can still cause whipping of shoots into wires and other types of things, or other shoots and cause infections. And we are seeing ooze, but I've inoculated, so I'm not seeing ooze in any of my non-inoculated trees, so or fire blight for that matter. In that case, things are probably pretty safe. However, we are in the post-bloom period, and good opportunity to make sure that you're keeping up with your perhexadione calcium. We had some hot weather. Seems to have worked in some of my trees to get them through that rather hot period. Now we're in a cool period, and you'll see that in the forecast area as well. Go after it. Last time we already talked about petal fall. Now might be your 10 to 14 days later to go after it with 6 ounces per 100 of perhexadione calcium, or 2 ounces of Pro-X and 1 ounce of ASM or acylbenzolar S-methyl and the product Actigard. Put that on there. That's just going to make sure that you're going to slow this growth down just enough to get through some of these hotter periods towards the early phases of shoot growth. And then I think once we're past that, we're past the threat of a lot of inoculum. Sticking up those cortical parenchyma cell walls in the shoots, prevent that bacterium from invading, which becomes a negative feedback loop. The more the bacteria ingresses down the shoot, the more it encourages its population members to multiply and spread faster. So we want that. We don't want that systemic invasion of the shoot. It can slow the growth of trees. We have enough water. If it's not slowing the growth of trees, it's not doing what you want it to do. You kind of want to slow it down now so we can get past this early petal fall, early shoot growth phase, and then we can probably more comfortably let the shoots grow into the rest of the summer. Even though if it does get hotter, we're trying to make sure we're not growing very actively when there's a lot of ooze or blossom blight inoculum that you may have missed. You can protect the terminals with a low rate fixed copper program, 7 to 10 day schedule. Just put the labels have very low doses for post bloom, and you can put these out on a 7 to 10 day schedule. If you're like moving away from the Pro-Hex, or if you've made 2 applications of that, you're like, okay, time to move into the summer program. You can put this copper on. This will hurt scab as well and help manage that, particularly in light weeks like the one we are having in New York. Be very careful. Make sure that you don't have a very fruit finish sensitive cultivar. You can cause fruit russeting, but if you're in a nursery or in an establishment, just put it on. And as long as it's a kind of a warmer, dry day, 60s to 70s, with a lot of dry weather, not a lot of cold overcast, you're going to be fine. You're probably not going to get any phyto or fruit injury with this. On most cultivars, maybe there's something rare or weird that I don't know about that injures easily with copper. But yep, this is where you start this program. You can keep it on going until terminal bud set and move from there. Just letting you know, it's a protectant. It will just sort of kill the surface bacteria. Unlike the Pro-Hex, it's not going to work on the inside of the tree itself, if you will. And of course, the reason why we have to keep applying it is because with the terminal growth, they will outgrow the copper residues. The copper lasts a while, but the new tissues will grow and the residues will be on the old part of the branches, and then that's kind of what you worry about. A lot of the ones that are easiest to use, I find in this particular case, are the liquid coppers that have low MCEs. What does that stand for? Metallic copper equivalent. There'll be liquid formulations of 2 and 3% copper with a soap or some other types of materials. They're very easy to mix. They're very easy to spray. The only thing I would say is if you are on a sensitive variety like a Gala or something else or a Sweet Tango, maybe avoid the adjuvants. You don't want to bring the copper into the tissues. That's how it ends up causing damage. You want that residue on the surface in case there's some ooze and it's spraying around and 2 branches are rubbing into each other, or a branch is rubbing on a guide wire and causing trouble. If you do see fire blight, what do you do? Well, this post bloom, and there are some newly developing strikes. You might see something like this. Don't panic immediately. We have many cool, dry days coming. this week. And when you have one, pick one, and you want to cut at least, in my opinion, back into the 12 inches into last year's healthy tissue. I mean, that's the minimum you want to do. You might look like this in the strike, you can kind of see it, and then we've removed it pretty far back and we've zoomed in. You want to find that next year of growth. You can see the years of growth. It'll look like a little wrinkly spot on the shoot. Let's see if we can see any in this photo. No, I've removed it already. Yeah, you'll go back. You can probably see there's the third year of growth back in there. I mean, that's the minimum you want to do. We find that it is very best to move if the tissue's in the first year growth, to move it into the third year growth, and or maybe leave a 5-inch stub. The 5-inch stub is to give you 5 inches of kind of really old tissue that fire blight has trouble moving through, and it will keep it from hitting that sort of central leader. If you prune something too close to the central leader, it, but not leaving any stuff at all, it might get into it and then ride the wave of the vascular tissue all the way to the bottom. And do you need to sanitize? Every study has done a yes or no sanitization. It doesn't hurt, but it doesn't necessarily always show a benefit. And maybe I'll show some pruning data from some studies we did a while back. A while back is in like 2 or 3 years ago. And we never really found a benefit to it, but it doesn't hurt. I usually use a Lysol wipe or something a little bit less caustic. If you don't like Lysol wipes, you can just spray it with ethanol. Just make sure to use some water on your tools afterwards to prevent corrosion. Bleach is amazing, but bleach will corrode if you leave it on your pruners. What else? If you're in the young tree area and you see something like this, where fire blight is right there on the main scaffold, you're best off sort of removing and replanting. These are like a 1 or 2 year old tree here that we were thinking of training, and you can kind of see that the fire blight has kind of reached the crux of the tree. It probably needs to be removed and replanted for the most part. 1 to 2 year old trees, active growing, high density trees, you might not be able to salvage them. Sometimes even if you see a little bit of fire blight here and there, it's already through the tree and you're like, I cut it out. And then it popped up over there. Mainly what that's happening is by the time you see it here, it has already ridden down the base of the tree and back up. It might not kill the rootstock if you're on a resistant rootstock, but it will have already spread pretty quickly. We have found that in some of our inoculation studies when doing those pruning type programs and pruning experiments, that on these high density trees, the bacterium becomes fully systemic in about 3 to 5 days. And so that's just a little bit of tips there. Or I'm going to wrap this video up and we will do a really quick look at any forecasts that we might have in the regions.